Need it up a little bit. Our first question is, who am I? And I did this talk years and years and years ago, the 3 important questions of life. Well, I did it as 2 important questions of life. And I'd like to tell you that I'm Ernest Stewart Nylander, and that I'm more than a few years old, and so I was thinking about how to start this, and I was thinking, well, can you rewind your mind to 55 years ago, say ballpark? Now, some of you haven't been alive for 55 years, so I'm going to give you a little framework. Kennedy was the president. I was a recent graduate from college in biology, and so I was a scientist, quote unquote. You know, the down here stuff was what mattered. And I was teaching biology and physics in the middle of the state of Florida. And cars weren't transportation, they were a statement. I had a Corvette. And a 63 split window coupe. The one year they made it, 1963. And if you go online, you can look at a 63 Corvette split window coupe and you can see what they're worth now. I wish I still had it. And so for years, I was just really good with the down here stuff. Let's wind our mind 20 years in the future and say about 35 years ago, I'm driving a Porsche. Still had to have my sports car, right? And I was in Santa Barbara, California, and I picked up a book and I started reading it, and it was about metaphysics. And I read it all night, got in the car, drove across the highway, and 49, and I forget who died on that highway. It was one of the movie stars or important people. Anyway, I stopped at the monument and looked at it for a minute and thought, well, I'm glad the highway's closed today. There was a rock slide in Santa Barbara, and so 49 goes from Santa Barbara across the state to Fresno, and so that's where I was going for the next day, and so I could put the Porsche on a 3-digit number and go across the state, which was really exciting because there were no other cars on the road, you know, being a closed highway. And I kind of zigged and zagged with a little car around the rocks to get on it. And about a month later, maybe less, I dropped into a metaphysical group in Palo Alto. I lived in Palo Alto, California at the time, Silicon Valley for everybody. And I dropped into this little metaphysical group, and I was saying to Gage, and that made all the difference. It's been an interesting metaphysical, esoteric ride ever since. And so here we are, 35 years later, and here is the place to be. And I was saying to Gage, originally I would say that I was spiritual, not religious, but now that I've gotten the spiritual thing inside out, or inside in, it's time to get the inside out and become religious as well. So I call it SAR, spiritual and religious. So, Gage, how about you? Tell us some things we don't know about you.
Well, there are no fast cars in my story. So, no fast cars. In fact, I'm more of a book person. I've always been a bookworm. When I was a little kid, I was a bookworm. Imagine walking into a restaurant with my dad, my mom, my brother, my sister, and little Gage with the book in front of his face walking. You think kids with their phones in front of their face today are so bad? But I was walking with a big book in front of my face. At night, I'd be reading, and my mom would say, it's time to take a shower, get ready for bed. Well, no, I'm in the middle of a chapter, so I would prop that book up on the sink. I'd take my shower like this, and read my book. I was a nerd, even as a child. Yeah. And I find that stories are who I am. I am my story. And I am the stories that become part of my life. I think that's true of all of us. I'm an introvert, and that's someone who gets energy from their alone time, as compared with an extrovert. I suspect that you're an extrovert, because extroverts get energy from their time with other people. They get their energy that way. And while shyness and introversion are not the same thing, I was also shy as a kid. And so being in a book was so much more comfortable and so much more safe than being in crowds or with other people. And coincidentally, I find as I look back that it was while I was reading, while I was immersed in story, that I felt closest to God, that I felt God moving inside me, that I felt like I was co-creating as I was imagining the world I was reading about. This is when I was co-creating with God. And of course, this isn't something as I was sitting there thinking, oh, I'm co-creating with God right now. But something that we look back after time and experience and can see that then and can feel it. I am my story. My story's not exciting. No fast cars. No one's going to option it for a movie or buy the rights for a TV series or draw it in a comic book. My life, I born in the Midwest to a lower middle class family, not rich, not poor, not genius, not Claude, not just kind of middle, kind of even. It's like a summer day on the prairie. It's just still, sunny most of the time, calm, pleasant. But anyone that's spent any time on the prairie knows that it doesn't take long before there are dark clouds on the horizon and winds blowing. You guys know. And it's ominous. And you see licks of lightning splitting the sky, and you hear the sound of thunder punching the air. And soon that pleasant day, that pleasant life, is ripped violently apart. And before you know it, the sun is shining again, the winds have died down, the storm has passed, and all is well. Maybe a little more humid, there's a lot more negatively charged ions in the air, making things smell fresh and new. And we learn that storms can make life better sometimes. We are our stories. My story. I've talked to you about the more potent storms in my life in past sermons. Depression and self-loathing and sexual orientation struggles. So I won't go into those now, but those are all very formative to my life. Suffice it to say that over time, the sunshine far outweighs the clouds. That the people I love and have loved, the work I've done, the ministries I'm a part of, they're all of the kind of the tingly, feel-good variety. They're the heartwarming parts of the book. And they are what sustains me when my story gets a little bumpy. Who am I? I am my stories.
Very good. I haven't discussed this with Gage, but when I started into learning about the greater consciousness and more things that are in heaven and earth than we can conceive of, I thought I was a body with a soul. And years later, lots of years later, it seems like, I came to the realization that we're soul with the body. And so that was sort of my conscious coming out from being just a scientist to becoming a little bit more. And it was a challenge. It was difficult. So how was your transition from newspapers to ministry?
There was no big booming voice. No booming voice said it's time to end your newspaper career and become a minister. There was no burning bush there, no calm flame led me to Utah. No angelic visitor said, this is the church you need to be at. God works in my life a little quieter, a little more quietly. God works in my life in coincidences. And it was a series of coincidences that led me to this place in my life. Coincidences where I just stumbled upon a particular church after decades, years of looking for the church that was right for me and being too afraid to walk through the doors. And finally a friend said, well, I happened upon this church. I never go to church, but I did, and maybe you should try it. And so I did. It was the right place for me to be. And then one day, not many months after that, I was reading the church bulletin and it said there's this program where you can become a lay minister, where you don't have to be ordained, but you can help with pastoral visits, and you can do this and this. And it takes 3 years of courses, of monthly courses. And I had just been thinking about how can I get more involved? How can I be more a part of my church? I don't want to be a minister, but I want to do something. And then this shows up. And then a new minister came to that church and saw in me something I didn't see in myself and nudged me. And who knew that minister was going to be there? Coincidences. I am very much of the belief that coincidences are more than coincidences. They're more than happenstance. When I'm in the right place at the right time, it's not just a matter of luck. It's a matter of God, the Divine One, has been directing me to that place, probably over a long period of time, because I'm not too quick on the draw. It takes me a while to get it. It takes me a while. So God has been correcting my path all along, and not demanding not demanding it of me, but rather luring me, beckoning me. Giving me feedback. When I get that kind of upset stomach, something isn't quite right here feeling, I know I'm on the wrong path. And by contrast, when I get that kind of calm, all is well feeling, I know I've answered the call correctly. And those are the kind of coincidences. Coincidences have led me to this place. Coincidences like not getting that church in Vermont, not getting that church in Minneapolis, and saying, rolling the dice with my husband Tim, saying, well, Utah, okay, well, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, and I have a ding and clunk theory. The Liberty Bell rang for the first time with a clear, beautiful, wonderful ring, and then cracked right down it. So the next ring was clunk, right? So when it goes ding, yeah, you're on the right path. You're there. You've got it. You're going for it. When it goes clunk, what? Probably don't want to do it. Probably not. All right, well, let's move on to our next question is, why am I here? A couple of years ago, and I'll tell you about this, and I'm kind of quiet, bashful, shy, and demure. You say you're shy, and I kind of do that. I kind of huddle down and hunker down and think about things. And I came to the idea, or the realization, that I had no heroes in the world anymore. Bucky Fuller, our Buckminster Fuller, who I saw his last two talks, and he taught me how to triangulate, which Einstein said might be the way that we proved the unified field theory. He passed on, made his transition. John Denver, the song, What One Man Can Do, John wrote about Bucky Fuller. They ran around together, and he passed on. He crashed his plane. Mohandas Gandhi, the Mahatma, passed on. Arthur Ashe, who was the tennis player out of Richmond, Virginia, and he and I played on. He was a little older than I was, so I never played him, thankfully. He was really good. He was a professional. And I'm still a ranked amateur tennis, but we played at the same tennis courts, and they were saying, oh, well, we remember when Arthur. And now they have on Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia, they have a statue of Arthur Ashe. He passed on. Or made his transition. I like made his transition. And so I, having lived in Richmond, Virginia, gone to high school there, I remembered that I went to the libraries and the museums, and in there you can find all of the old letters and the State of the Union messages, and I read dozens of Washington's letters and Jefferson's and Franklin. Franklin was really interesting, and then John Adams, who was the attorney of the group, and probably a rump, get it together, make it do what it wants. And then I thought about, what about the poets? I like Whitman and Emerson and Frost and all those guys. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to this hero thing, and they don't have to be in my world right now. I can read their literature, I can read their poems, I can sort of commune with them. And then I was thinking, well, there's got to be somebody else. And then I thought about, who can you think about that has influenced you as a mentor or hero? And I thought about, the 50s rock and rollers, you know? And I think about those guys, and all they sang about was love. You know, sometimes it wasn't doing so well, and other times it was doing really, really well. You know, the ding and the clump. And then I thought, well, gee, you know, I can listen to 50s music. And I do. Oftentimes we'll have hits of the 50s on the stereo. Now, was there anything else? Well, in high school, I had a speech class, and I was pretty bad at speech in high school. And my teacher said, okay, what I want you to do is to memorize the Gettysburg Address and give that for your speech in our speech class. And I did, and I gave it, and it's a little bit better than not great. So now, is there anybody else that you can think of that just might be a good influence in the world? Yesterday, today, and maybe even forever. And so I finally came to this church, and Gage taught me about Jesus. And you know, if you listen to his sermons, there's always something that pushes it past the parking lot for me. You know, I take it home with me and go, yeah, you know, he just said something that really made my day. And sometimes my whole week.
Well, now I'm on the spot.
Yeah, you've got to be good now.
But Jesus, yes. Talk about heroes. Especially considering, when you think about it, Jesus was a nobody. Jesus was a nobody. He was a peasant. He was from some backwater village that wasn't important in any way. He didn't have any cachet. He didn't have an inheritance from a wealthy family. He didn't have name recognition. He didn't have fighting skills. He didn't have high-class education. He had nothing to offer his followers. Nothing. Nothing but himself. Yeah. Because Jesus knew who he was. These questions, who am I? Why am I here? Jesus knew his answers for those questions, and he knew our answers for those questions too. Jesus knew who he was. He was a human being and a divine being. Divinity and human. Jesus knew who he was, and he knew we were like him. He knew that we had divinity within us, that God lives within us too. Now, what's the difference between Jesus and us? He knew who he was, and he knew what to do with that divinity, and he knew how to use it. And he tried to teach us. He tried to teach his disciples. He tried to teach us. And sometimes they got it, and sometimes we get it, and sometimes they didn't, and sometimes we don't. But he planted that seed to help us remember, to let it grow and blossom, to help us remember our divinity, remember the God living inside of us. So yeah, Jesus is quite a hero.
And we were talking about the Gospel of Thomas and how he was supposedly teaching us from his perspective of being a twin. And I think we can all think of ourselves as a twin. Everybody in here, everybody on the planet, and Jesus as well.
Jesus said, be like me.
Yeah, the one that scares me the worst is, these works and greater ones you will do. Now there's a command. You will do these works and greater ones. And then my next question is, where do we go from now? And let's look at the future. And when I teach classes, I tell people not to drag their illness, their pain, their whatever it is, into the present or into the future with them. Say up until now, and then move behind it, or move beyond it. In the past, I had some physical challenges. Don't choose those anymore. Emily Dickinson said, forever is composed of nows, N-O-W-S. Forever is composed with nows. So we have decisions. And I told Gage I was going to give him a few decisions, and he could tell us what his future looks like, and maybe help shape our futures.
I forgot about this part.
You forgot them all? I got them written down, luckily. And I wrote decisions. Decide what we want is greater than our fear of having it. I mean, that's the next step, is what you want is greater than your fear of having it, or your fear of going there, or your fear of doing it. Okay, so what would be your choices as you think of them right now?
My choices of
where you want to go, what you
where
want to do, where you want to be?
Well, I want this to be over. My choices are, I want to help in any way I can make this bit of the body of Christ the strongest bit of body of Christ that it can possibly be. It is making the world a better place, that we together, I hope to help be a glue that glues us together to live out our beliefs, and live out our spirituality in our world, in our community, and to be a decent glue and not one that dissolves pretty easily.
The next one I have is focus. You can focus on a flower, or you can focus on a landscape. What do you think your focus is?
Well, I told you I'm not too quick on the uptake, so it takes me a while to figure things out. But how can you choose? How can you choose between focusing on a flower and focusing on a landscape? Sometimes the clouds cover up the landscape, so you don't have any choice. But I think of myself and each of you as a flower to be focused on, but you're all part of the landscape too. I'm cheating here because I'm saying both.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's why I come back, is because he always has insights that go beyond what mine are.
What cheating?
We have sleeping dreams all the time. A couple of nights ago I had one that was pretty exciting. But I think our waking dreams are just as important as our sleeping dreams. What would you say would be a waking dream for you?
For me, a waking dream is, the unrealistic waking dream is to have no cares and no worries and no fears. The waking dream for me is that I stop worrying about you and just love you without worrying about you. That I stop worrying about our church and just love our church. That I stop worrying about the world and just care about the world. Do you see the difference there? Worry doesn't, somebody said somewhere along the line, worry doesn't get you very far. You don't get anything out of worry. But you get a lot out of caring. And to care for someone, and to love someone, or to care for a people or a world is a lot different than worrying about the world. So my dream is that I can stop worrying and start caring.
Yeah, my mother was a worrier, and 98.725% of what she worried about never happened. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I always do. And so I decided one day, I went off to college in Florida, and of course my parents lived in Virginia. And I came home right after I graduated, and I was going to spend a couple weeks there and hang out with my friends. And my parents sat down and we started talking, and I was very surprised at how much they had learned while I was away at college. And I'm going, well, why didn't we talk like this before? Guess who wasn't ready? Guess who didn't quite have it? So then I decided to make a commitment. I was going into teaching, and I decided I would commit to that, to the science, to biology and physics that I was teaching. And I had some rough spots that first year, and I don't know if you've ever hit any rough spots in your life, probably not. But I made the commitment to go over, around, through, underneath, wherever I had to go to get beyond that shadow, that cloud, that challenge, and make it an opportunity. Have anything like that in your life?
Challenges and opportunities. When I first came to this church, I thought, well, this is going to be a challenge. And I'm going to be very frank with you, and it doesn't sound great, but when I first preached to this congregation, there was a lot of white hair out there. And I thought, I did. I went back with Tim and I said, there's going to be a lot of funerals. Yeah, I did. That's what I thought. My first year is going to be a lot of funerals because there was a lot of, I took it by the age of the folks. By the way, I didn't officiate a funeral for 3 years after I got here. You people are tougher than you come across when I look at you. Very tough. What was I talking about? Challenges? So I thought, okay, so here's a church that has a lot of older folks, and they're going to need care, and they're going to need support, and you do. The older folks who were here at that point, at that time. You do, but not the care and support that I thought you needed. You needed support to do the things you love to do, to help, to do mission, to do outreach, to do fellowship, to live your life to its fullest. You didn't need me to hold your hand and be at your sick bed, although sometimes. And that's no different than the younger folks in the congregation too. So the challenge for me has been in this church that turned into an opportunity was to see people differently than what I originally thought. You guys keep me on my toes. Yeah, then the people that I've met, and I haven't met everybody closely enough to really say that you're a friend or acquaintance or anything like that maybe, but have been really, really nice, really, really interested in what I think or what I'm doing or what they can share with me, how they can give me a leg up or can give me a little bit of encouragement or whatever. And it's been a blessing for me. Thank you. And you. Yeah. Give yourselves a hand. And then the last one, well, I've got one more question. But let's talk about goals. What would be our goals for us? And maybe you guys can think about... I would rather hear what your ideas of what the goals are for us. Just 3. First 3 let's bring them up. Popcorn, pop up. And... Come on. Goals for us. Andy, I know you must have one.
I have a lot of this. I want to keep our minds and our hearts and our arms open to anyone that happens to walk through this door.
Keep our minds, hearts, and arms open to anyone who walks through the door.
Yes. And have the facilities necessary to serve them and every need that they have. Yes.
And have the facilities to serve them in every need they have. Great, thank you. Another one. Well, the goals aren't good unless they're lofty. Well, unless they're difficult to reach. Any others? I know you guys always talk so much downstairs, but okay.
I would just really like to see a way to strengthen this church and help it to grow because of what it has given to me in the last 5 years or whatever it's been. And I just know what it can do for us, and so many people out there need this. They need what we have.
Strengthen and grow the church and let the people in our community who really need our particular church somehow help them find us. Yeah, more of a feeling of home than just a group that gets together once a week or 3 times a week or whatever. All right. And then my final question. If we were put on trial as being Christ-like, or as Carolyn would say, progressive Christians, could we be convicted? What do you think? I plead the fifth. That's the goal. Christ said, Jesus said, be like me in so many ways. And even as what we heard Susan read, when he was leaving them, finally, he gave them peace. He said, I will always be with you. And then he gave one more charge. He said, you forgive sins, or you can retain sins. And a lot of people think that maybe he was saying, I'm giving you the authority to judge other people or decide whether their sins are forgivable or not, or whether they cannot be forgiven. That's not it. He's saying you must forgive, because if you don't forgive, then that sin remains, and it sickens the person, and it sickens the world, and it's on you, because you didn't forgive that sin. So, if you retain a sin, the sin stays in the world, and that's on you. So forgive. And that is how I think we get to the point where we can say, yes, I'm trying to live like Christ.
That's the ding. And Walt Whitman said, be curious, not judgmental. And I think we could be curious, find out what other people are doing, or find out what other people think, or just ask questions of people out in our world, and find out a little bit from them. One of the things that we like to think about is lifetime learning. So always be learning, always be curious. For me, I've got a couple that I wrote down, is to improve, grow, and help create a church community home for everybody that wants to be here. Bill back here is filming for us today, and we're going to put our work out there so that we can do some more speaking engagements. And he runs Channel 17 on Comcast, so if you get a chance, look at Channel 17. It's a cool thing, and Bill's a interesting person. And you can also go on your computer, ogden.cc, correct? Cool. And then Global Peace and Prosperity Initiative is the Global Peace and Prosperity Initiative. We're going to work on September 21st to have, to assist the world in growing in global peace and prosperity, not that people get rich, but that every person, every child on the planet has a meal every day. And then it's a kind of an interesting one, and I'm doing some of the marketing for the Utah Falcons. It's a female tackle football team. They play at Cottonwood High, and the 27th is their next game. I can't be there because I'm traveling, but they're really neat people. And the next would be have my dog trained so that she'll come when she's called. She's got chow in her, and it's almost like, herding cats. You call her to come, and she goes. And number 6 is to be a better husband. I'll commit to that. How about you? Now there's. Well, maybe I can play a little volleyball. I don't have volleyball.
I wondered what that was for.
But it doesn't have much hair because it's got dog teeth marks in it.
That's what she was busy doing, coming when you called. Well, my goals are just to, and I'm not very good at it yet, but to leave the world a better place than it was, to make at least one life a little better, a little safer, a little more secure, to address an injustice, if even just once, to be kind when I see unkindness, and to love when I see fear and hatred, and I'm working on it. And I think that we have our whole lives to work on, to improve, to practice, to perfect, and that our purpose and our project is not done until we take our last breath.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gage. I know this took
Thank
you.
you, Ernie. This was a good experience for me. All right.